What exactly is an AI control plane? How will hiring practices change next year as a result of AI? Which tech company do we boldly predict will shift to a 35-hour work week next year? I'm hoping it's known well. We'll have to find out. Hi, I'm Courtney Baker, and this is AI Know-How from Known Well, helping you reimagine your business in the AI era. As always, I'm joined by Known Well CEO David DeWolf, Chief Product and Technology Officer Mohan Rao, and Nordlight CEO Pete Buer. We also have a discussion with Domo's Chief Design Officer Chris Willis about why it's time to redefine real time. But first, Pete Buer joins me to break down some of the latest and greatest in AI news. Hey, Pete, how are you?
I'm good, Courtney. How are you?
I'm doing great. So, Pete, according to Business Insider, KPMG wants new hires to think more like managers, specifically managers of AI agents rather than paying their dues. It's kind of a novel concept. Pete, what's the takeaway here?
So a lot of the big consulting firms have been criticized for seeing AI as a mechanism for just replacing bodies. Great example recently in the news, PwC indicated it's going to be cutting entry-level hires by a third. KPMG, however, is taking a different path, redesigning the work of junior consultants rather than redesigning the size of the junior consultant class. On the one hand, that's hopeful and feels responsible to me at some level. Train your junior managers to run a team of agents as part of their remit. On the other hand, it raises questions for me about the juniors. If agents are doing all their analyses, are they not learning the ins and outs of those analyses themselves first? School of hard knocks kind of stuff. If agents are creating all their presentations, does the work suffer for the lack of original insight and teaching point shaping and storytelling design? Maybe most importantly, if the juniors aren't doing that kind of work themselves anymore, are they reliable? Are they qualified to be the human in the loop, judging that work, looking out for hallucinations and slop? So, takeaway for leaders, I think, is to step back and reassess the economic model associated with consulting and the inherent risks, which may be changing. If you're a buyer, probe hard into how the work's getting done. So you don't pay more than you should for machine-generated work. And you know what to look out for in the way of risk in terms of the advice that's being delivered on the back end. And if you're a seller, take the opposite approach and lead with transparency. Disclose where you have agents in the loop, what their work is, how you're validating their outputs, and have your business case ready to justify costs in the end.
This is so interesting. I mean, we all anticipated these things happening and really starting to kind of shake up this industry. It seems like we are seeing it across the board. It'll be really interesting a year from now to even look back and say, where are we now? And then what does the future look like? I mean, how do you replenish talent when you basically are cutting the bottom off of the thing? So really interesting questions to probe and think about.
Stay tuned for episode 200, where we will play back for you the results of that process.
Yes, exactly. Pete, thank you as always.
Thank you, Courtney.
I sat down with David and Mohan recently to get their predictions on what 2026 will hold in the world of AI in business, and to make a few predictions of my own. The episode is always a lot of fun to record, and this year was no exception. David, Mohan, welcome back. It's that time of year where everyone is thinking about next year. So before we actually turn our calendars, I wanted to get us together to look deep into our crystal balls. Actually, I don't believe in crystal balls. I don't know why I'm saying that. But what do we see happening for 2026? David, why don't you lead off?
Let's start with this. I think that 2026 is the year that the talent markets start to shift. and they are going to reshape around what is truly human. They're going to start to shape around things like judgment, things like true creativity, and start to value those types of skills more than just past experience. Because the world is starting to see that past experience in this day and age with AI is fundamentally different. And so I think in 2026, we start to see shifts in how talent is hired, managed, stewarded in organizations. The talent market as a whole shifts.
All right, Mohan, do we feel like we got enough concrete? Let's just make sure real quick. Do we get enough concrete? Are we going to know if he was right or wrong at the end of next year?
I think we'll see press reports and layoffs and displacement and new hiring, and it's I think there'll be signals that we'll have to pick up to see if the prediction came right or not in
Okay.
aggregate.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, Mohan, are you ready?
I am ready. So here is how I'm thinking about 2026. And you see the shift happening already, that it's going to go from AI experiments to AI systems. It's going to be less about the models, but more about the infrastructure that finally makes it possible for AI to be reliable at enterprise scale. So my prediction, Courtney and David, is this really sexy term called AI control planes. Like enterprises are going to adopt AI control planes, and you'll know it when you start hearing in popular press about infrastructure, cloud, and AI control planes.
Okay.
Can you define AI control plane for us? Like, what's the really concise understanding that I can just put in my pocket?
Yeah, it's what's happening right now in the industry is that, it's easy to create agents, it's easy to consume models, but it's really hard for them to operate as a system. And this is what the AI control plane is going to provide.
Hmm. Interesting.
Okay, are you two ready for this?
Here we go.
Here's my prediction. I think that we have entered a very technical era called slop. SLOP for everyone listening, because I do have a little Southern in there. And I think because we have entered the era of slop, we will see a decline in LinkedIn because there is so much people are not depending on creative thought. It's just all AI output that LinkedIn, if they don't figure out a way to help incentivize unique thought on their platform, that we will see a decline, either exiting people viewing LinkedIn because it's become just a combination of sales plus AI, or there will be some kind of total shift where LinkedIn figures out how to account for original thought. It starts to emphasize actual creativity and hopefully
Mhm.
move us out of the era of.
I've got to agree. Like I find LinkedIn to be so overwhelmed with sales copy and content and auto generated crap that you just have to weed through, that I agree that it's really hard. But I also think this one actually has already come true. This is a little bit of history, not a prediction. Did you see the recent announcement in the last week around Divine, which is a remake of Vine? From, remember
No.
Vine when
Yeah,
Twitter
I
launched
do
Vine?
remember Vine. Yeah.
So yeah, so Jack
Had its
Dorsey
moment
has
in the sun. Yeah.
taken the artifacts from Vine and rebranded it around Divine and is launching it. And the whole premise, from what I understand, is no AI. So I think we already have a social platform that here within the last couple of weeks is heading down this path and trying to recover true, I don't know if you call social media true human connection, but more of it than just auto-created AI content.
Yeah,
So
I think next year there has to be some kind, like, it has to come to, a breaking point of, either it has to, it's like a fork in the road. Either it's got to be fixed or it's going to decline significantly to the point that it becomes, a business decision not to. David, do you want to start us for round two? Second
Round
prediction.
two, I think that 2026 is the year that vertical applied AI moves to the forefront and just generic large language models move to the back. And I think the real thing here that's going to drive it is it's going to be less about just generic abstract intelligence with which we've all been wowed by. And it's going to be more about context, situated intelligence. How do we understand the workflows, the pressures, the communication, the language, the incentives, everything that surrounds the judgment, the intelligence being created, and the winners that will start to really move to the front are the organizations that figure out how to leverage the abstract intelligence within this context. And I think that context is going to be vertical domain. And so I think we're moving to a spot where both applied AI, which has kind of been on the rise already, but then applied AI applied to a vertical domain is really going to be the battleground of the future and where the economics are derived for this industry.
David, in your mind, when do you think something vertical takes off and something horizontal is not enough? Like, do you have like a tipping point in your mind as a generic thing that we could apply here?
In my mind, there's always room for both horizontal and vertical. But I think where vertical starts to differentiate is that it is easier to really drive this ROI that's been in the news lately, right? You can look at concrete problems that are not so generic that they get watered down and don't provide the type of lift, right? Look in the finance world, right? The way we underwrite a deal, like we'll just use that, right? That is not something that is so generic that I can take and apply it to any industry. But it is the business. Like it is so important to those financing companies, right? So are there generic use cases that are truly horizontal? Absolutely. And those will thrive. But I think the biggest impact to business is when we start to actually stitch together those horizontal layers and apply them to a specific domain to solve very specific problems. We hear the words high friction use cases a lot, right? What are those high friction workflows? What are those high friction processes? Where are those areas that businesses fail or struggle or have pain points? Those tend to be specific to a domain, not just generic.
Mohan, you ready?
Yep, prediction number two. I'm going to predict that the AI-led delivery pods are going to redefine B2B services, and we're going to start seeing a trend on this. A little bit of linkage to how David framed his prediction number one. I think it's going to be the year when we'll see the start of this flipping from human-led with AI support to AI-led with human judgment, is how I would say is the
Love that.
transition. And in this delivery model, if you want to imagine, there could be a strategist, like a product manager perhaps, a domain expert, and a dozen agents doing the heavy lifting. I think this is going to have profound implications on B2B services companies, where the humans decide and the agents do. And that's going to be my prediction. And you're going to see the start of that trend in 2026.
Okay. All right. I'm going to give y'all a prediction that I can already tell you David is not going to like.
All right. I like it. Let's fight.
Okay. And it feels bold on the surface, but it's actually not bold because I think it's right in front of us. Okay. So here's my prediction. It's going to be easy to test if we got there or not. I think we will see our first Fortune 500 company announce a shift to a 35-hour work week with no reduction in pay. It's not a pilot. It's not an experiment. It's a full-blown company-wide policy change. And I think it will be due to them actually being able to have outputs from AI and actually turning it around and allowing humans to get the repercussions of productivity, not just sucking in the profit, but actually turning it around and let some of their employees reciprocate some of that. And the data is actually there. If you look at some of the use cases, the companies in Iceland and the United Kingdom show very clearly that productivity does not go down at all. It actually goes flat or improves with the shift to a 35-hour work week. So that's my prediction, that there will be one person in the world, one leader that says, you know what? I think we can actually take this moment to rethink that 40-hour work week that has stood the test of time for so long, and we'll see them shift to a 35-hour work week. And okay, let me add to this story. Okay. I'm actually, I don't know if it should count against me if it's not this person. But I actually have
Count
someone.
against me. She's just trying to win. That's all she's trying to. She's picking one in motion already so that she wins.
Yeah. Okay. I actually have someone in mind that can lead this charge. And it's a company that has invested a ton into AI, and somebody that may need a little positive press right now. Whether or not we agree or disagree that he should have gotten the negative press, he does need a little help right now. Do y'all have any guesses? Do you know?
Just the way you're saying that it's not going to be Elon. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's not going to be Elon.
It's like there's no way.
It's going to be Mark Benioff.
Ah,
Okay. So plus, he's living in Hawaii. He's been getting all the Hawaiian chill, that's going to make him feel like, you know what? 35 hours a week. I think they can do it. You two know that I worked in a company that had a 30-hour work week, 30-hour a week work week.
How'd that
So
work
I've
for you?
seen it done. It did work.
Did you work 30 hours every week?
I worked 30 hours a lot, quite a bit. Not, there were some other factors at play, I would say, the last year that made it really challenging when I took over multiple new departments and we had an org shift. That was really hard. But before that, yes.
I find it's going to be very hard for me to believe that this is going to happen in America. Right. So,
Maybe
you
Europe.
know, maybe, hopefully it happens, and we all have leisure time where we can go learn pottery or Greek and Latin history or something. But somehow, with all the extra time, but somehow I find it hard to believe that it's going to happen, because there's going to be new creative endeavors and new work that's going to just come and take its spot, I think.
Mohan, I think you said something really compelling. I actually don't have any dispute with the prediction. I think the prediction, I think it will happen. I think we've seen some already try to move in that direction and go. The question to me is not whether it will happen. It is it good for humanity? I don't believe that we are made to be people of leisure. And I think exactly what you said is true, Mohan, which is most people get their purpose, their mission, the value they contribute to the world that gives them self-esteem by the work of their hands. That may not be a corporate job somewhere, but I do think that it's not just a matter of, hey, we're going to start ramping down the work world and everybody's just going to sit on the sofa watching TV, or reading their favorite book or whatever. I think there's this natural hunger to contribute, to add value to the world. And I actually think it's good for humanity for people to do that. And so, like how it's sliced and diced and whether it's corporate America or not, I'm kind of ambivalent on. I will, it'll be really interesting to see, like, what do people actually do with that time? Like, we have this whole world of, like, the side hustle is so prevalent now, right? And there are so many people that aren't just working their 40-hour job, but they've got these side hustles. I don't think that is only because they need more money. I think a lot of them, it's actually because they're searching for more fulfillment than just the clock they're punching at their job that doesn't give them that fulfillment. And so I think those concepts have to be part of that conversation. But your prediction itself, I wouldn't be shocked if it comes through. I don't have any debates with that.
Courtney, do you think your prediction also extends over time to non-information jobs? Meaning,
Hmm.
there are AI-able jobs and there are non-AI-able jobs. The 35-hour week extends to car mechanics and grocery store workers and
Yeah.
whoever it is.
I mean, that would have to be a really seismic change in our society, I think, for that to become true. Like, it really would have to be, like when the original 40-hour work week was set, and then it, kind of disseminated throughout our culture. I think it would have to be that huge of a shift, where everyone is shifting to that. I do think, I don't disagree with you that work is incredibly fulfilling. I also think that, and maybe this is more true in the United States, we have found only one place to fulfill ourselves, which is work. And there are many other domains of life to fulfill that we have basically kind of cut
Yeah,
off. And partly because we've been in an inflationary economy. Things have been challenging, and so it takes
yeah.
money, guys, beef is so expensive, right? My
It
eggs will
was
come
eggs.
down, my beef
It
is
was
gonna
eggs. Now it's beef.
coffee is expensive,
Mhm.
and
I think
so
Yeah,
it's really interesting what you just alluded to with, when the 40-hour week, because if you actually look prior to the 40-hour week, right, in the agricultural world, depending on what estimates you look at, it was 10 hours, 16 hours a day, right? It was a totally different world. So there is I think some precedence for what you're saying of we do and we can get more efficient at work and move some of our time to other ways to seek that fulfillment than
yeah.
just through our work. So I think that's an interesting point.
And culture is also shaped by laws. I mean, the reason we
Hmm,
have a 40-hour week is because it was signed into law by FDR, who reduced it from 44 to 40. So, maybe at some point there's going to be legislation that says it's 35, and then we all think 35 is normal,
right.
right? So that is a way of also molding societies and culture.
yeah.
Yeah, it's be really interesting. It would be such a cool, just to like look and see a society that has a 35-hour work week. For example, hey, when we have time to exercise, are we actually better in those 35 hours than we would have been
100%.
in
Yeah.
40 hours? If we really, sleep in America is like an all-time low. No one is sleeping. If we were actually sleeping, would we, all of those factors. Now, would people be wise enough to do those things, with that extra time? We would have to see. I wish I could have like a little, like a little test study and just examine a city that has a 35-hour work week.
Do you think in this always on world that we live in that there are people that live that way already? That do value their exercise and do value their sleep and do value their work. But if you were to actually take the time that they were actually working, they were working 30 or 35 hours the way, you would measure sitting at your desk, but they're always on. And so nobody really realizes it, but they do optimize for that. And they're truly judged on results, not on time.
Yeah, potentially. I don't know. Like, I've actually thought about this quite a bit because in this remote culture, we really don't know. Like,
Yeah.
just because I sat here at this desk literally almost from 9 to 5 straight yesterday, other people may be, taking an hour break to go take a run, or which I have done before and it was glorious. That one time was awesome. But, and then, I don't know, like, I think, different personalities probably have different, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
modes.
Yeah.
I think there are some of us who are fortunate who have control over our hours when we work, how we work.
Yep.
That is the minority of people, right? So for most jobs, you're expected to show up at certain time and leave at certain time. Let's say you work in a clinic, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
the way it is going to be, right? So I think it's really interesting. It's very thought provoking who this applies to and who this does not apply to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you two. Always interesting to think about next year. I honestly, frankly, blown away that it's this time of year to be doing these types of things. It's just mind blowing to me. Um, I'm looking forward to getting to the end of 2026 to see how we did. I think we all did great. I'm sure we're all going to be correct because everything goes the way that we plan it to. David, Mohan, thank you as always.
All right. Take care.
Thank
Get
you.
some rest. Take some time off. Go take a run.
Take your vitamins. Play a game. Read a book.
You want more revenue from your clients. Of course you do. We all do. You also want stronger retention, better engagement, and clear insights into what actually drives loyalty. Good news, the latest enhancements to the KnownWell platform were built to help you achieve those very things. You can start a 30-day trial right now to see your own intelligence on the KnownWell platform. You can get started today at knownwell.com/30 days. Chris Willis is the Chief Design Officer at Domo. He leads design on Domo's platform that's built to bring data, AI, and business workflows into one place so leaders can move from static reports to living intelligence. Chris has been pushing the industry to rethink what real time actually means and what modern business intelligence should look like now that AI can interpret data instantly.
Chris, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you.
Always like to start with just a little bit of context for the audience. So could you give us the sort of the cliff notes on your role, your company, and where AI fits in?
Yeah, sure. So I helped start Domo about 14 years ago or so. I'm the creative design officer at Domo. And so right from the get-go, we had always thought of sort of creating a large AI data products platform. It's taken us quite a bit to build all of this, and I think we've gotten really lucky in the sense that a lot of these large language models, for example, can use a lot of data and a lot of context. But as the chief design officer at a big data platform company, I'm kind of in an unusual position in that most of these companies are very much engineering driven, and we've really taken a much more consumer focused, human centered design approach to AI. And happy to chat about any of that.
Well, I'd love to dig in, and thematically, I know we're on the topic of agents, so let me start there. I think 2025 will have been the Times Person of the Year will have been the agentic AI technology, but you've got real world hands-on experience designing and building AI agents at Domo. Can we start there? I guess,
Yeah,
I guess I just at the highest level, help us to understand how the whole notion of agentic AI fits into the Domo offering.
I feel lucky in that I get a front row seat to what some of the biggest companies on the planet are trying to do with AI and where they're struggling. Because we're a giant sort of data AI products platform, we're able to solve problems for lots of different kinds of companies. So I get to see a really diverse set of use cases. And one of the things I've seen, and we can talk about this a little bit later. I've put together a kind of a running list of AI barriers to adoption.
Yeah.
But one of the things I've seen right from the get go is that there's kind of a magical thinking component to AI, where I think a lot of decision makers have played with, the plethora of tools out there from OpenAI, ChatGPT on down, and have just sort of extrapolated that to all of their business problems, thinking, well, if it can tell me like what a good workout to do at the beach is, or a good recipe for soup that I want to make, great. Why can't it answer everything about everything in my business that I haven't even told it I want to ask it. So there's this kind of magical extrapolation I feel that's being applied to thinking. And I think closing the gap is one of the places where we spend a lot of time, and sort of providing real world practical examples from what we know the models can do. So to that, the most practical advice is companies have to get their data in-house in order. It is not an easy thing to do, but they've invested, millions of dollars in cloud data warehouses and tools for wrangling this data. But just because an executive gets a dashboard does not mean they're a data-driven organization. And I see that as one of the bigger gaps. I'm happy to, dive in on any of those. It's a pretty big,
Well,
a
let's
pretty
go a
big
little
topic.
deeper on the dashboard idea.
Yep.
I guess a good starting point would be, in order for a listener to appreciate where we're going with the conversation, can you share a couple of the use cases how you're making dashboards come to life and making sense of data in that context?
Sure. So when it comes to dashboards in organizations, there's two different flavors. There are the dashboards that have been built and curated by humans over time, and they're used pretty regularly. Most dashboards, 70 to 90%, go forgotten after the first few weeks or months. So what we've been working on is making it a lot easier for people to create charts or dashboards to answer specific kinds of questions agentically. And that is definitely an area that companies are getting really excited about, because it pulls together several different disciplines that typically are lost in the dashboard sort of creation story, which is there's a lot of work that goes into it. There's the data work, there's technical work, there's data visualization disciplines, right? Like, what's the best way to tell a data story? What is the data story you're going to tell? And who are you telling it for? And so we've actually created some new kinds of agents that we're using internally that we hope to release pretty soon, that make it a lot easier to create these, but also agents that are being used to evaluate whether or not you've broken any of the sort of cardinal rules of dashboard design. Like, are you using the right kinds of charts? Are you dissecting the data in the right kinds of ways? And we feel like that's still really important. The dashboard's not going away, but it's going to be augmented with a lot more intelligence. I think that's going to be the key thing. And some of that intelligence is going to be through interpretation. So helping you understand what the story is that's being told. And some of it's just going to be in just discovery, right? Has someone already solved this problem for me? Is there already a dashboard that exists?
Is it possible to put into common tongue, for lack of a better term, the difference between an agentic powered dashboard and the dashboard that we all grew up with?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the barrier to creation is now so much lower. So people can create anything, right? If you think about, like PowerPoints, for example, PowerPoint came along and everyone became sort of a designer, right? But they had the access to the design tool. They didn't necessarily have the design knowledge. And I think that's where agents are honestly a huge, huge benefit, because it allows everyone to just come to it without having to understand all of the tasks that need to be understood and executed to create a dashboard. And instead, it's a much more goal-oriented experience. I need a dashboard to tell me how we're doing in our retail locations.
Yep.
I need it to tell me how we're doing by store, by product line, et cetera. So it's gone from a task-oriented sort of situation to a goal-oriented situation. And I think now what you're looking at is people have to be good at asking good questions, right? They have to be good at kind of interpreting and asking better questions after they've already received, whatever the digital artifact is. And that's actually something we've seen as another barrier to many organizations, which is a lot of times it's the IT department or the data science department. They work a lot. They create these very extensive, very complicated sort of dashboards. And then all of a sudden they get pretty discouraged, because those dashboards then force new questions to be asked. And they're like, wait a minute, we thought our job was done. And with agents, that changes the model completely. And so I think building the infrastructure to allow lots of iteration and to create, new kinds of ideation along the way, it becomes a much more collaborative kind of experience rather than a one and done.
Nice. Well, and you earlier waved at a long list of recommendations that you have in your back pocket about adoption.
Yep.
Can we hit on that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've got a large list. I would say the biggest one. They're not all equal, but I would say AI adoption is going to fail far more than it succeeds, not due to technical limitations, but due to organizational design and leadership gaps. And like one of those gaps we're talking about is just the understanding of like what can this technology actually do.
Yep.
But I would say the speed at which agents are kind of entering into the enterprise and the speed of change is creating one barrier, which is an integration slog. And that is, it takes weeks or months for code and decisions to be made in an organization. But the the technology is moving much faster, so it's outpacing the time it takes to make even strategic decisions, right? And so how do you coordinate that? How do you coordinate things that are not moving on similar
Yeah.
timelines? I would say also there's a governance vacuum that's being created pretty quickly
Nice.
around no clear owner of like who owns the AI or who owns how AI is being routed, how it's being implemented, or what happens when it fails? Who owns the failure of AI in the enterprise?
Hmm.
So is there any like, a directly responsible individual, and do they have a charter for understanding and guiding when AI specific risks? Um, I would say another one is this. I guess you would call it like handoff hell. That's another one that I think plays into the dashboard idea that you were talking about, which is it's very easy to generate something. It's very difficult to create it to put it into production. So with one step, you get an answer, and you get maybe a dashboard, and there's some code behind it. How do you make sure you haven't opened up? Well, one, is it actually giving you the right answer? So can you
Right.
validate?
Yep.
Two, has it entered or created any kind of potential security or privacy issue? Right? Have you created a new attack surface,
Yep.
unintentionally? And then can it be part of a workflow? Like, can you map the workflow so that it can be integrated and maintained over time? So that handoff hell is pretty rough. I think one of the things that you have to do is you have to have sort of these built-in sort of human verifiable steps. So I know we've talked about, before human in the loop, but I feel like that's where things are changing, where we're used to this sort of like magical experience where we get something. And now it's like, no, we have to figure out how to use AI and agents as kind of like these unreliable interns that are doing different steps of the work, because the unit of work in organizations is going to change, right? If you think about it, back to your dashboard example, that is a unit of work, right? People go to their job and they produce an email, they send a text, they have a meeting, they create a dashboard, they create some code. Well, now all of a sudden the unit of work is some kind of digital artifact.
Yeah.
So how do you fit that into a workflow where, maybe not everything I'm doing in my day job is replaced, but we're now generating new kinds of artifacts, and that's going to affect what my job is going forward, and also what my role is going to be. Because I think that shift, it sounds subtle, is moving us from a very process-centric, deterministic process that organizations have been organized around, these sort of functional hierarchies, to a outcome-centric process.
Hmm.
And so that's sort of the big shift. And so all of these barriers that I'm talking about, from handoff hell and governance vacuums and automation traps and things like that, those are, I think, coming along for the ride when you see that shift happening.
When I think about your background in design,
Mhm.
in the context of the trust challenge, I had this framework in my mind of user journey, from education on the thing to starting to use the thing through to getting outputs from the thing. And are there lessons, are there investments that you can make to engender trust intelligently in the natural flow of someone's awareness of and use of a tool?
That's a great question. I mean, if you're ultimately trying to create human-centered design experiences, you can't do it without an understanding of trust. And I think trust is, it's kind of a big, kind of ambiguous word. People
Yeah,
don't quite
it's a
understand
monster
how
noun.
you can
Yep.
you can engineer for trust, and we're kind of throwing it around as if it's really understandable.
Yeah.
I think, the fact that it's a simple common word belies the fact that it's actually very complicated. So
We should be solving for love and happiness while we're at it, I guess.
we'll take care of those on the next podcast. So I think when it comes to trust, again, if you're an enterprise and you're trying to create tools, I assume that's kind of the way it is. You have to remember that, at the end of the day, you are ultimately dealing with people, right? And there are certain things that people value, and there are certain expectations that they have. And so we have seen many, many times in organizations that small sort of oversights can cascade into bigger issues of trust.
Mhm.
So, for example, maybe you had the right data, but because other people didn't understand that was the right data, they added other data, and now you can't find the right data. So that's just as good as I can't trust anything, right? Or I looked at this dashboard and it was a little off, so now I can't trust anything else. So there's sort of human tendencies to find patterns and extrapolate from those things, which you have to be careful of. And so I think, back to this idea of like, maybe don't innovate, start with marginal gains. We find the companies that are more successful are the ones that start small, start with projects where they don't have, it's not a moonshot. It's something they understand well. It's simple enough. It's low risk enough so that if something goes wrong, they can fix it and no one loses their job. And then from that, they can learn and they can then share that. In organizations, trust is built where there's a lot more what we call low level interactions amongst many different people. So I worked with an expert in trust and social network analysis a few years ago, Karen Stevenson. She actually wrote this book called The Quantum Theory of Trust many years ago. She actually had, sounds like hyperbole, she had a PhD in quantum mechanics, and she also had a PhD in anthropology. So I think she was the only one who
Wow.
could actually,
That's a cool combination.
truthfully,
Okay.
send that. And what I learned from her many times was trust is built amongst the small interactions, and many of them. So it's not a one and done, although it can be broken pretty quickly. And in organizations where trust is high, she would say information moves at the speed of light. I think it's going to be the same with agents. So you have to build trust into the system. And trust doesn't necessarily mean everything has to be accurate all the time, but it does mean that there has to be oversight and that people can call out when things are not going right. And that's where, I was talking about the sort of the importance of like the governance aspect of it, right? The governance vacuum. I think that's going to become way more critical. And so transparency becomes, to be more direct to your question, transparency and auditing. Okay, this model or this dashboard is being built this way, and here's why. And here's the lineage, the data lineage, and here are the sources, and here are the actual queries. Doesn't mean you're ever going to dive in and have to, evaluate all of those things. But if those aren't there, um, how do you even begin to make decisions that could have huge ramifications? And then what do you say if they go wrong? Well, the machine told me to. So I don't think, it's going to be like the dog ate my homework for the 21st century. So I think trust is something that has to be built into the system. It's cultural, and then it has to be sort of nurtured, and that's difficult.
I'm looking at the clock and I'm ruining the fact that we're at the end of time. And I just want to say thank you. This has been fascinating. There's a ton of gold for folks listening. So very much appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you, Pete.
Thanks as always for listening and watching. Don't forget to give us a review on your podcast player of choice. As always, we'd really appreciate it if you would leave a review or share this episode with someone you know would enjoy it. At the end of every episode, we like to ask one of our AI friends to weigh in on the topic at hand. Hey, Claude, what's going on? This episode, we're making predictions for what we think will happen with AI in business in 2026. So, what do you think?
Oh, nice. I love this topic. I think we'll see AI assistants become way more integrated into everyday workflows, like actually booking meetings, managing projects, and handling routine tasks autonomously, while companies finally figure out how to measure ROI beyond just efficiency gains.
And now you're in the know. Thanks as always for listening. We'll be back next week with more AI applications, discussions, and experts.
Hey, if you made it this far in the episode, first of all, thank you. And second, we know that AI is changing all the time, and so we've got you covered. Here is another great episode for you to watch to stay in the loop on what's happening in AI and business. And second of all, we'd love for you to subscribe. You can do that right here. I've always wanted to do that, by the way. So do that now. That would be great.